And Danny Boyle joins us tonight from Manchester, where he's been there for this weekend opening events. Thanks for being with us. In 2015, when public money is so tight everywhere, why is it the right thing, in your view, to spend, nearly £20 million in this case on an arts centre?
Well, I think it's there's a number of arguments that you can use, and they're kind of, I'm sure you've heard them before. They're fairly well rehearsed. If you believe the figures, which I do, that an investment, a £1 investment in culture will return £2 economically, and then there's the social cohesion that these centres create, that investment in culture creates. But it was interesting listening to your article just before this about data gathering, and that's something we've been talking about tonight at home, and the importance of culture in moving forward. What the next generation, the digital natives, what they are going to need from their culture. Because you have this double whammy, don't you? You have, as you've just reported, governments trying to gather the data, trying to decrypt the data and understand it so they can track for criminal reasons, if you like. But you also have these enormous companies who are gathering data on us all. They're not really interested in our money anymore initially. They're interested in everything about us that we will give them, and they will take possession of under their umbrella that becomes theirs. And I think that when people are reduced to data like that, when people are reduced to simple economics like that, I think culture has a wonderful part to play to stand up against that and actually says, no, culture will tell you you're not just data, you're something else.
Which companies are you worried about in that context? You sound like you have real concerns. Who about?
Oh no, I mean, it's not. It's a general observation really about Facebook, about Google, about the way that our lives are tracked and actually recorded. When you read those stories about the doll that's got a microphone inside it, and that the information that children are talking to this doll is being returned to companies and might influence simple and what seemingly initially are benign things like what colour clothes the toy companies should give the dolls to wear the next time, things like that. I mean, I think that's an enormous worry going forward about our freedom and our culture. The support of culture is actually about. It's not just about, as I said, social and economic reasons. It's also about protecting something much more, even beyond that, really, which will be ultimately our freedom. We need people to stand up and say and examine and question: are we happy with the way that our lives are being ultimately controlled? I mean, if you read the Dave Eggers book, I don't know whether you've read the Dave Eggers book, The Circle, which I recommend to anybody. He brings a wonderful tone of unease to this seemingly benign corporation called The Circle, which is basically a mixture of Google and Apple, and the way that they create these wonderful facilities for society. But actually there is a price to pay ultimately as well.
How do you think, though, the arts and promotion of the arts, like at your new centre, could mitigate to that anxiety that some people have?
Well, it's the same reason as the famous saying, we read to know we're not alone. You meet people who also share these concerns about it. And if politics is running out of steam in terms of people being able to relate to and being inspired by politics, and you certainly sense that from the last election, then it's up to artists really to provide some kind of inspiration about the way we face up to these challenges moving forward. Now, and that's one of the exciting things about Manchester City Council's investment in, as you pointed out, quite a hostile time for this kind of investment. The investment they've made in this new arts centre in the centre of Manchester.
Now, the government is trying to make great play of its own commitment to the north. You can't move for government ministers talking about the Northern Powerhouse. Now, whether you love or deride that phrase, Danny Boyle, what do you make of the government now trying to focus or show that they're excited about the north of England in a way they perhaps weren't previously?
I think the more centres of excellence that are created in our cities across the whole of Britain it'll be a very, very good thing. It'll help London ultimately. I mean, I live in London, and it would be wonderful to share some of the amazing resources that tend to be focused on London. So I think creating centres of excellence like Manchester, and it isn't just for Manchester, it's across the whole northwest. This facility, you sense, certainly at the opening today, you sense that it'll be able to draw people from a huge catchment area and service people's needs with culture.
But one of the things that we've just seen in real detail at the election recently is this real fragmentation, if you like, of our identity. Now, you're hopeful of this centre can sort of pull regional identity together in the northwest, but do you see fragmentation in our identity now?
I think you can certainly, there's certainly a case to be made that if that has happened, it's because of such enormous concentration on the success story, if you like, that is London. That it becomes self-fulfilling, it becomes magnetic, it just pulls everything towards it in a way. So this kind of focus that Manchester City Council and other supporters have given to create a centre of excellence in Manchester across many, many facilities, not just home, but across other facilities as well,
but do you
is a huge help to rebalancing that, I think. And I think it'll help actually, in a sense, give a greater sense of whether we all belong together as across these major cities, whether they all stay in the same nation. So you can imagine Glasgow, Edinburgh, Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle, Birmingham, Cardiff.
But you raised the point there, Danny Boyle, of places around the UK being able to hang together. Now, politically, it certainly seems that is under threat. 3 summers ago, of course, you were the very person who distilled what you believed your version of Britishness was in that Olympic ceremony. Would you be able to make that same ceremony again today? Would you?
Well, actually, that's one of the things we've been talking about today. I think if we did the ceremony again, it would be a very different ceremony, actually. And I think it would be to do with the challenge that's thrown to us, not by separatism, actually, but actually by, as I said to you at the beginning, about the data collectors and what that says to us about our next, what shape our nation will have for the next 20 years. And it's something that faces all civilized nations, if you like, or sophisticated nations.
Are you worried about the shape of the UK in the years to come?
Not in terms of nationalism like that. I'm worried about other issues such as the control of these corporations. Yes, moving forward. Yeah, and I think culture's wonderfully placed, particularly with the kind of support it's got here in Manchester, to actually create an alternative vision for that. A vision that's to do with community. It's not to do with being separate, imagining some kind of digital community. It's an actual community. Because, of course, these spaces are places where people can actually come together and share ideas and just share coffee. There's a lot to be said for that kind of visceral humanity.
Just very briefly, Danny Boyle, what can we as individuals do in the face of what you clearly see as a threat?
I think you have to ask yourself, do we want to give these people our lives like this? Because they will not stop. The data collectors will not stop. There will be nothing to stop them. And I think culture will be well placed. Governments and the police will be able to police certain areas of it which have questionable legality. But for the vast amount of time, and this is what's good about the Dave Eggers book, it's entirely benign and in fact seems quite positive. But there is a price to be paid where you are reduced to data, as I said.
Danny Boyle, thank you so much for joining us. We have to leave it there, but thank you.